going to be teaching this class. This month, we're going to be talking about reviving the passion that we have. I don't know about you, but I was thinking back about what it is. I struggle with keeping fired up, especially when we went virtual. It was very hard for me. But I started thinking back about when I was in school. When I was at school at Sunset, I was really psyched. And I know part of it was the newness because I hadn't studied a lot of things. So everything every day was new, and that's exciting, right? But I'm not sure that that was all there was to it. I began to think about it. And one of the things that characterized Sunset is you had campaigns like every 10 weeks that you had to go on. Sometimes you could break from it, but you had to do a certain amount every year. Every Thursday night, I went down to the building, the church building, the church I was attending, and we went through visitor cards and went out and visited people that had come to services. We had a variety of activities in addition to our schoolwork that we were engaged in. And looking back, I think that maybe that engagement was as much a stimulus to me as the study was. So the interaction and not just the interaction with the students, but interaction with people in the congregation, even though it was a huge congregation and I didn't know a lot of people there. But when we went down, anybody could come down on Thursday nights, and they had all these visitor cards of people that had visited services, and you could pick maybe two or three in the same area and grab a partner and go out and knock on their door and talk to them about the church. And another night of the week, all the students got together to pray. I really think that interaction was as much as the study in stimulating me and my faith and the things that and my passion about being a Christian and my excitement about it. And I like this picture that's up on the screen because there's a flame building, a flame there, but at the same time, flames are fragile. They can burn really big, and in a very short time, they can go out. And what makes them burn is feeding them. We have to feed them. So we're going to talk a lot about that in the next 4 weeks, and talk about what we can do to revive our passion and to keep it. And it really has been difficult because for all of us, because a lot of the things we wanted to do, like one of the things that I most regret is that we couldn't have a trunk or treat, because trunk or treat to me was a big boost last year, a boost to the little young kids and a boost to the families involved in it. So things like that kind of stir us up and get us going. And I miss being the youth minister. For one particular thing is we had activities all the time, and I was constantly involved in either planning them and usually attending them. So I was with the kids every week. We had planning days every week, and I was at the same time during the later years both an elder and the minister. So it was a busy time, but I seem to thrive on that, and I thrived on the interaction with people. So I want us to think about whether we can meet responsibilities and obligations. I don't know of anything during this pandemic. I think I've been as busy as I've ever been as far as doing things. but they haven't, a lot of them have not been things that stimulated me very much. I did them, I met my responsibilities, a lot of family obligations and things that we had to do, a lot of things with the foster care system that we had to do, and we did all those things. Okay, I don't remember a time that I said, oh, we're in a pandemic, I don't feel like it. You know, I did the things. In fact, one of the things that shocked me, I've had a couple of end of life visits up at the hospital, and when the hospital was closed, they still allowed end of life visits for ministers, but only by invitation. And so when they called me on the phone, they asked me, will you come up and see this person? And I said, well, of course I will. And she told me, we can't find, most ministers turn us down. And I was stunned at that. I was like, what? But, and it was, I'm telling you, it was a headache. It was like, you had to have a certain time, you had to show up right on time. There were people there. You had to go through 3 stations to get into the hospital. Then you had to go directly to your room. And as soon as you made your visit, you had to leave and go straight out. All right. I mean, it was very, very structured, but it never crossed my mind not to do that because it's what I do. I mean, it's just something, it's a part of me. So I've met all my responsibilities and obligations, but there's clearly been things lacking. And so what I want us to try to do together is identify things we can do. We're going to start meeting together again next week. So let's hope and pray that things don't get any worse, that they continue on and we open up, and eventually maybe by the end of the year we're doing all the activities that we want to do. Okay. But what can we do to stir ourselves up, and what can we do to help stir others up to constantly fan that passion? And we'll be looking at some scripture that I think that may help us in regard to that. So these are some of the things. These are both stimuluses. They can be stimuluses and they can also be distractions from our passion. How many of you have ever retreated into your work when you were going through a hard time? You just worked hard, put your emphasis into your work because it was easier than dealing with the frustrations you were having. I've done it, so maybe others haven't, but that's a common thing. I run into it all the time. I counsel with couples and they say, we're just not as close as we used to be. We're not doing as much as a family as we used to be, but his work has taken over his time. And then when I actually talk to him, his work hasn't increased any. He's just spending more time at work because it's something, usually our work is something we know. And even if it's a challenging job, it's our skill set. So, you know, it's easier to do than face some of the other things. So family can be a real stimulus, can also be a lot of responsibility and a lot of, can be tough at times. And it can be a distraction from we can sometimes use it as a distraction from our service to God and the things that we want to do. I was talking to my wife tonight on the phone about it, or today after I preached this morning. I stopped at KFC because there's a particular meal there that we know the exact number of carbs, and Joe can have it. He likes it. So we do that on Sundays a lot. And so driving home, I was talking to her about a little bit about ministry and regrets, and we talked about family. There was times when I was younger that I did not spend enough time with my family, that I opted to be involved in church activities And I believed that as long as I was in a church activity, if my family was with me, that was family time. But then I found out that it was not what my family always needed, and I had to make some adjustments. Home, finances, even relationships can be a distraction and can take away from the passion that we have for Christ and our relationship with Him, and clearly recreation. I'm of two minds on the recreation thing. This generation that has come up now, that have the young kids in our family, are in our church family, are very involved in family recreation. I like that. I wish we had done more of that. At the same time, it's one of the reasons we struggle a lot of times having a regular teaching program, a regular and keeping things functioning smoothly, because when the weather's nice, a large portion of our congregation is gone. That's not to say, I didn't say unfaithful. I said they're gone. They're not meeting with us. So that's a struggle in terms of the things you plan. I remember one year we had a VBS, and it was announced like 5 months ahead of time, and 3 or 4 of the leading people involved in VBS went on vacation that week.
What?
And it was very difficult. We shuffled a lot, and because that was the weeks they took for vacation. So there's a lot of things that can get in the way, and I don't want to be critical, because I'm not being critical. I think all of these things are good. It's balance that's hard, finding balance. So I want to look at 4 areas. How many of you, I described this the other day to somebody, and I don't know if everybody had the same experience, because obviously I've only had my experience. I used the term that I fell in love with Christ. They didn't like the terminology. They said, I've never thought of Jesus as a romance. I said, I didn't say I was romantically in love with him. I fell in love with him. I saw who he was as a person, his character. I was just totally drawn to it. Does anyone remember that? Is that a singular experience, or do you remember feeling that way?
I don't think I ever called it love, but it's an appropriate term.
I did. That is why I got baptized.
Okay. Yeah, I've been studying with somebody, and we were talking about why to be baptized, and I told them, and they asked me, why were you baptized? And I said, they said, because you wanted to go to heaven. I said, yeah, of course I wanted to go to heaven. I wanted to be part of the church. I wanted to have my sins taken away. But the number one reason I was baptized is I loved Christ. I was not converted to baptism. I was converted to Christ. Baptism was a response to my wanting to have a relationship with Jesus. And so, like every relationship, relationships take effort. I remember a friend of mine telling me that his wife and him are so close they don't even have to work on it. They don't even half the time we don't even spend time together. That's how close we are. I don't want to be judgmental, okay, but That's not been true in any of my relationships. In any of my relationships, if you don't spend any time on them, if you don't work at them, they suffer. There has to be effort put out. And if, you can say, somebody can say, well, loving my wife is not any effort, that sounds really good. That's like a Valentine's Day card. But the reality is we need to act in certain ways and behave in certain ways to nurture that relationship. And the same thing is true of Christ. It's one thing to be in a relationship with him, and it's another thing to maintain that relationship and grow in it. And I think that one of the struggles we have, I know that when I first, and I know I've already talked about this in previous classes, but when I went to Sunset, we were taught how to convert people to Christ. It was a list of scriptures, and the dialogue that connects the scriptures. And then the punch, at the end where you, I still remember the guy saying where you hook them, it's like fishing. And, I was young and I was listening because I didn't know anything about it. And I'm going to stop just for a sec because I really like Chrissy's comment. Growing up in the church, I don't remember not having a relationship with God. See, my wife would feel exactly the way you do, because they had family devotionals and before she was able to probably remember them. And she just grew up with the family taking turns and discussing scripture and singing. They loved to sing together. They would sit in a circle. They didn't even have a TV. They'd sit in a circle and sing hymns together. That's not how I grew up. Okay, there weren't a lot of hymns in my house, and the TV was essentially a babysitter, so people didn't have to interact. But I really respect that. My wife and I had this discussion a lot, and she can remember, because she taught me about Christ, she can remember the excitement that I had. Something that she had always known was new to me completely. And it was so captivating. That's the best word I can come up with. So what are some of the things in any relationship? What makes a relationship get stale? I hate to say that, but that's what
Taking the other person for granted.
Okay. You think we can do that with God? You think we do that with him?
Yep, we definitely run a risk of it if we're not careful.
One of the things that has helped my wife and I during the pandemic is we almost daily discuss the blessings we have and how good God has been to us. Usually that takes place at night. We're getting ready for bed, but we'll talk back and forth about the good things that happen and just about the blessings we have, and how God has blessed us and being together and our children and church, and to kind of remind us of the benefits of the relationship that we have. This is Psalm 42 always strikes me. As the deer pants for the water brooks, so my soul pants for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When shall I come and appear before God? There's a longing there. So what distracts us from that?
Hmm.
Marty, are you thinking something?
I have a lot of things that distract me. Uh, I my goodness, just the needs of the day. Just, I can look at my list and it can be distracting.
Okay.
But I find that if I put prayer first thing in the morning as a priority, it helps. It helps a lot.
Okay. Yeah, Laura said obligations. I get that. I understand that.
You kind of mentioned them before when you said work, family, home, finances, relationships,
Yeah.
All those things.
It's kind of easy to I'm a list person. I make lists. I've got so many lists. On Sunday tonight, I will schedule for the entire week. And then every day, if I don't get something done that's on that day, I move it to another day that week. So that hopefully at the end of the week, I've accomplished everything I planned. And it's easy to retreat into that. To feel good about the week because you checked everything off. But miss out on some meaningful things that are important. And somebody, I think it was Bill Knapp, we were talking, I don't remember, somebody was saying in a discussion we had one day, I think it was an elders meeting, we were talking about when something comes up, when like your day, your entire week is filled, and one of your children has a crisis, your whole week changes.
That's right.
Nothing matters except that. That's the thing that matters, because it has been moved to the top of the list. And so I know that it's not quite the same when, but in some way we've got to find ways that moves God to the top of the list. So our relationship with him doesn't get caught up in, doesn't get dragged down, I guess, by other things that are important that need to be done. So Chad, when you say there's no list, are you meaning you don't have a list, or are you meaning that when something happens, there's no list?
Actually, it was me that said it. What I'm saying, when you're saying that someone's in crisis, the kid's in crisis, there is no list.
Absolutely.
There's nothing else. All that matters is that child.
Yeah, and some examples of how that I've seen this in my relationship with God also. Well, when my grandchildren used to be here a lot, they were little, and we were there. We were childcare for our grandchildren, and I would be at my desk working, and Nathan would come and say, "Grandpa, can we go for a walk? It'd be really sunny outside and nice." And I would almost invariably stop, get up, and go take a walk with him. And I never regretted any of those, ever. To this day, Nathan talks about those walks. He remembers that. And one day we, like a couple years ago, we walked around the neighborhood, just talking about our walks and the things we used to do. There was a hill we used to run up and down, and I'd chase him up and down the hill. but a lot of it was about talking about God. And I came to love those walks. And for those time that time that I was there, nothing else mattered but him and what we were talking about. And everybody that in your home, everybody that you're in a relationship with, not the same amount, but everybody needs some of those times to keep that relationship fresh. Where, you know, there's certain people in the body, I'm not going to name them, but when they're talking to me, I feel like I'm the only person that exists. When they talk to me, it's really to me they're talking. I want to emulate that. I want to be that way where when I'm praying, I want to be totally into that. When I'm studying, I want to be into that. And when I'm in a conversation with somebody, I want them to feel important. I want them to feel like they're a priority. And I think we need to find ways to stir up that longing for God. I remember that longing. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying I've lost all my longing for God. I'm saying that it needs to be stirred up. It doesn't just continue to exist without any effort. We have to find ways to stir that up. And, you know, different people have different ways. Sometimes books do that for me. Sometimes things I read. Sometimes right now there's a roommate that Jeremy had at Sunset that is doing a daily Bible devotional every day. And I recommended it to somebody and they got back and said it wasn't that exciting. I said, no, it's not. He's not Mr. Charismatic or anything like that. He has a podcast. But the clear study that he puts into it is stimulating to me. And the little comments he makes, and he's a little bit monotone, so you have to be right there listening patiently. It's funny in a way because he starts out with a little song, and it's not his day job. Okay, he's not a great singer. I certainly wouldn't want to do that. But he sings a little song just like he's having a Devo in his study. And then he has a little prayer, and then he does a reading, and he talks about the reading, and then he closes with a prayer. They're like 15 minutes or something. So I've been doing those because I know the guy. He's contemporary with my son. They roomed together at Sunset. He's gone through a lot of bad situations since he left Sunset. He was in ministry for a while, and he had a bad situation with his family. But he gets up now. He works long hours. When he comes home, he does that devotional. He falls in bed and gets up and goes to work again. That's all he does, because he's decided he wants to do this devotional. That's going to be his thing that he does. And it's inspiring. So we need to do things that will stir up that thirst and inspire us. And hopefully we're all working on that in our life. This is a passage I read a lot where Paul says in Philippians 3, verse 8, I count all things to be lost in view of the surpassing value of knowing Christ Jesus, my Lord. Wow, now Paul's looking back. So I think I can understand that. I often say to my wife that when I became a Christian is when my life started. I don't really count much before that of being of much value. But so I do get it, but that's just an amazing statement. the surpassing value. And especially when you know Paul's life. See, my life was, I was young when I became a Christian, and I had, most of what I had done was bad. But Paul had been a zealous person. He had studied, and he was at the top of his game in his profession. And he was looked up to by everybody. And Paul says all of that was nothing. It was rubbish compared to knowing the surpassing value of knowing Christ. That's powerful. I'm just going to move on to souls. Yeah, that's another area where I think we struggled. Don and I have talked several times at the office. We have tried to think of different things to reach out to people during this pandemic. It's just extremely hard. I've talked to a lot of people. On a good side, a lot of people are interested in talking because of the pandemic. I think there is an emptiness. On the other side of it, I have hardly ever found anybody who wanted to come to my office to study, or me go to their house, or them come to my house, or come to services so that we could study. It's really been a tough time to make that happen. So it would be easy for us to stop thinking about the main purpose for which the church exists, and that's to try to bring people to Jesus, to draw people to him. I think that as churches, we've gotten sidetracked over the years on different programs. The big one when I was in school was bus ministry. Anybody remember bus ministry? Okay. Bus ministry was great. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not criticizing. But I don't know how many churches that I went to that said, "Oh, we've got a thriving ministry. We're bringing in, 150 kids every service." And that was their church was thriving because they were bringing in 150 kids. I'm not saying it wasn't worthwhile to teach those kids about the Bible, but in many of those cases, there was very little effort. The actual program had become the end. The purpose of it was to bring people to Christ, but they'd lost their purpose. Now the purpose had become getting more buses and bringing more kids. And we do that as humans. We do that all the time, and we do it in our own personal lives. We do something and it becomes a program. And once it becomes a program, a lot of times there's so much effort put out on the program that we lose the purpose. I right off the top, I can't think of a lot of examples, but I've seen that happen over and over and over where we've done that. Benevolence programs are an example of that. Benevolence programs are great. The packages that we were giving out, and we haven't made an announcement about it, but we have not given out the things because the people that were supposed to give us the contacts have had so many people in their agencies with COVID, they haven't been able to come up with the contacts, and we've been waiting on them. And then when the checks started going out from the government, we thought it was a bad time to do it. So we've been kind of waiting for a lull where they would be more appreciated and where we could get the contacts. But again, that can be another one of those things where you put out a lot of packages, feed a lot of people, or please a lot of people, and really accomplish very little as far as bringing people closer to God. When I was first a Christian, that would have been a huge thing. But now, what I found, there's so many churches and so many agencies that are helping people out that we get back to that issue of taking it for granted. And people receive it, and that's the end of it. There's not any interest. We've had people call us, and then when we called back, they'll ask, "Oh, you're with the, such and such Catholic church, right? Because they're supposed to call." No, we're the Church of Christ. Oh, okay. And you're not this group, because they're supposed to call us too. And you realize that they're on everybody's list. And they're getting assistance from everybody, and they're just waiting for their stuff to come in. And so we can do all that stuff and somehow lose the mission. And this passage is what always I go back to. The Son of Man is coming to save that which was lost. That's Christ's mission, and therefore it has to be our mission because we represent him. I had a discussion one day with a guy on the phone, a minister from down south, but we were talking about it. He was talking about the purpose of the church, and I said, in my opinion, we can do a lot of things. There's a lot of things that the church did. This is the purpose of the church. Anything that replaces this is not helping at all. This is the purpose, that we bring people into a fullness of a relationship with Christ, that we save lost people. We're like under shepherds that are out pulling the sheep in that are straying, and trying to bring them to be a part of Christ's flock. So, and I remember in the beginning being really excited. I went to be a youth minister in Ohio for a summer internship. And one of the things that I asked them, they told me what my duties would be. And I told them, well, in addition to my youth duties, I feel as a Christian an individual obligation to be involved in Bible studies. And they're like, well, you don't need to do that. Your job is to have activities for the youth. And I said, no, that's what you're hiring me to do this summer, and I will do that. But I feel the individual need to be involved in Bible studies. And we went back and forth about it. And so I did their activities that summer. In fact, I did them the whole year, even from Texas, and I drove up twice to Ohio from Texas, even though I wasn't getting paid, to handle special activities that we had. But in the same, I felt compelled. I think I had over that 3-month period, I had a bunch of studies, but I passed on those studies when I left, and I think 6 of them ended up in the people being baptized that summer. But I thought it was really important to be, as a Christian, to be involved. I don't mean that that it's the number of Bible studies you have. I don't mean that, but I felt I had to have involvement with reaching out to the lost, in addition to responsibilities that I had in the church. And I think looking back, that stimulated me. It excited me. Even to this day, I strive to try to get Bible studies, even in the middle of COVID, because that's our job. Not as a minister, that's our job as Christians, is to bring people closer to Christ. And we can do that in a lot of ways. Don't misunderstand me. It's not just Bible studies with people from the community, but we need to be involved in that. That's the Great Commission. We're going to look at that. We're all familiar with it. This passage, 2 Corinthians 5:20, therefore we are ambassadors for Christ, as though God were making an appeal through us. We beg you on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God. Be reconciled to God. So, how many of us, how many of everybody that's in this class, how many of you think about the people that you're in contact with and how to try to influence them for Christ? Okay. So,
I don't know that I spend as much time thinking about it, but I know that I do reflect on it.
Yeah.
listen, I don't think there's, this is not, I'm not trying to pat her on the back, but my wife forever amazes me. We do not have anybody that comes to our door that she doesn't, I've seen her, somebody delivers a UPS box and I've seen her ask them if they want a drink because it's a hot day. And while she's getting the water, usually they say no, but if they say yes, she brings a card, she talks to them about the church, asks them if they're looking for a church, asks them if they have children, tells them about our children's ministry. She actually makes me feel, she challenges me. That's what I'm looking for. She challenges me because it never seems to leave her mind. And I really like that. I really want to be more that way. And there have been times in my life that I was more that way. But all those things we talked about earlier can also take precedent in my life and keep me from focusing on the things that I really need to be focusing on. So this is, I was thinking about this today. Down in the basement, there is a VCR tape. It is a tape of my father. Those of you who know me know I didn't have a great relationship with my father. It's a tape of my father emceeing a church activity. After I went overseas, he became a Christian and became very, very involved in the church there. So I didn't know him that way. So I have that tape. I've never watched it. All right. My wife says that probably if I saw a therapist about it, it would yield a lot of good conversations, but I've never watched it. I keep thinking I'm going to, but I haven't. It's difficult for me. But they talk about, people have told me about it. They've talked about his involvement in the church there. And I remember that congregation, very flawed, just like every congregation, just like our congregation. A lot of human people in the congregation, not too many superhumans. So we had problems, but a great place to become a child of God and be nurtured. And I remember when the church in Spearman that was supporting us when we were first here, for 5 years we had outside support in addition to the support that the church here was able to give us. And they came up from Texas. And I'll never forget when the elders were leaving, they said, we've got a great congregation. Our congregation is more active than yours is here. And it's more, we've got more programs than you have. We have several workers. And so we're more organized. We can do a lot more than you're able to do here. And he says, we understand that. We we recognize that we're supporting you here because we want to see you to be able to develop the church and get it more organized and get more things going on. And then he said, there's only one thing that you have here that we really could grow in. One thing we don't have as much of. And he said, it just came to my mind last night when I was laying in bed. He said, it's love. I was like, wow, I didn't know what to say about that. This congregation has always loved each other. There's no doubt about it. I've been making elders calls the last few days, and for the most part, everybody is happy to hear from me. Everybody. And I find it so uplifting seeing what they're dealing with and what's going on, and it's been encouraging. A lot of them that I talked to are not coming back next week, but they said it won't be very many weeks until they'll be coming back. And that's encouraging. And just I really feel a sense of family when I make those calls. And that aspect, I think I'm going to jump. I don't want to speak for somebody else, but it seems to me that Chad has said something about this in the past, and that it always related to me. And that was the difference the church made in his life. The difference that Christ made in our life, that's obviously true, but the difference the church itself made in his life. Am I right, Chad? You talked about that before? It may have been.
Doesn't jump out
Okay.
as something I've made a big point about
Well, you've talked
before.
about the elders about meeting in person and having that.
Yeah,
It was important to you when you were younger.
yeah.
Well, that's-
There was a lot when I was younger, yeah.
Okay, so that was true to me also. The church became my family. I didn't have much family life, and so the church immediately, I felt like they adopted me. They took me into the fellowship there. Even before I was baptized, I started coming. They just grabbed hold of me and embraced me, and then I became a Christian, and it was even more so. And it created a craving for that. And wherever we've gone, I tended. Sunset was hard because there were so many people, 2,000 people. I mean, so we tended to build a relationship with the students and their families more. But Hale Center, Texas, we worshiped in Hale Center, Texas. We became a part of that body, and we were in their homes and they were in our homes. East London, South Africa, King Williamstown, South Africa, everywhere, here, back in Iceland where we grew up. All of those places became my family when I was there. And that is so precious to me. And you see people like that, and then you see them begin to drift and pull away, and lose that. And it's really precious, and we need to strive to hold on to that relationship. And it's easy to lose. It's easy. My dad used to say something, and I don't give a lot of lessons from what my dad taught me, but one of the things that he used to say is, you become like the people you're around. He used to say that all the time. And I used to tell him, no, I can hang out with anybody, and I'm my own person. But he was totally right. I was not right at all in that. I look back now and I realize that if we're around Christians and we're around people that stimulate us spiritually, we're going to grow and we're more likely to be able to maintain that and become stronger and stronger in it. We pull away from that. And that's why during this time, you know, we've tried to keep as much contact as we can with our brothers and sisters. We, you know, I'm normally not on Facebook a lot. I've been on Facebook more during the pandemic just because that's where people were making comments and you know, I'm not a big person for that type of thing, but I did a lot of that to encourage other people, and then found myself being encouraged in the process of it. Phone calls. My wife is great on cards. She sends cards out. She sent out a bunch today. She's really good at sending out cards. Just anything that expresses that relationship. And it is certainly much better when we're meeting in person. There's no doubt about that. But we make the best of what we have, and we've found that even like talking at a time like this, even when we finish class and just talk a little bit, it's interesting what somebody has to say, and we talk a little bit about what's going on in their life. All of those things are precious to me. I think it's really easy to let that relationship grow weak. Just like in our physical families. My brother's oldest son died in December, 46, died of a heart attack suddenly. It was devastating to our family. I can't even put into words how devastating it was. And but my brother and I talk about twice a year. We have probably talked 15 times since December. All right. And I was telling my wife, and my sister and I have talked 5 or 6 times from Texas, and we only talk once a week. So something good coming out of something tragic. And you know, we need to, just like with our physical families, we try to pull ourselves together and build that family up and have a relationship. In the same way, we need to be working on that with our church family. And you know, one of the reasons, not only there's 100 reasons I like meeting physically, but personally, but one of the things that I have missed and I really enjoy is talking to the children. Because I can talk to the adults, but I don't call children, right? And I tend to not get involved in social media with young children, even if they're on there. So it's really nice when we come together, and I always tease, I see Andy's on here, I always tease Michaela about her smile, and she smiles bigger after I do that. And that means a lot to me, that relationship and stimulating that relationship. It's something that has to be worked on. We need to strengthen that craving for the church. I know we ran out of time, so we'll pick this up next week, but I'm going to talk about a couple of other areas that it's easy to lose sight of, and we have to keep them stirred up if we want to keep that passion alive. It's just like there used to be all these books out. I remember when I was at school, all the students we're all young couples, and all the students were reading these books on how to spice up their marriage, and some of them are kind of funny, but anyway, relationships need a little stirring at times to keep them vibrant, and our relationship with God isn't different than that. We need to put the effort out to make it thrive. Any questions or comments before we close for the evening? I appreciate you being here.
Yeah. Kerry,
Yes, Ben.
you know, speaking of buses, I think when I lived on Balltown, when I was super young, I think we had a bus in the church parking lot.
Yeah, you did. I remember it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
When we were at Sunset, they had a huge bus ministry. They actually had a bus garage because they had so many buses. All right, it was pretty amazing. They were bringing in kids from all over town. So
It was a good class, Kerry.
thank you, Ben.
Yep.
Anybody watching the Super Bowl tonight?
Probably, I hear they have good commercials.
I don't know. We always watch it. I don't have anything invested in it, but we usually watch it. Jeremy and Shar come over every year and watch it with us. So we're gonna do that again tonight, I think.
Mhm.
Appreciate your comments, Kerry.
Thank you.
Good class.
It
Thanks,
you know,
Jeremy.
when you consider all of the one another passages that are throughout the epistles and in the gospel accounts, it just is so necessary to get to know the brethren, to get to know them by name. And I mean, Frank and I have been there for like a little over 3 years now, and we're still working on names and on putting faces with names. And that, of course, the virus hasn't helped this past year at all.
No.
But it's so important. When I appreciate the prayer requests that are coming through the texting and emails. That's helpful.
When we went to Broadway, when we first moved to Lubbock, Texas, we moved into Broadway, and our congregation sent us with a letter, basically a recommendation letter to the elders wherever we went. So we've done that here with people, some of the people that have left that have asked for one, but we didn't ask. They handed it to us and said, wherever you go, give this to the elders. And so it wasn't sealed. So I looked at it, and basically they told him, get them involved in everything. They like to do everything. I'm like, what? Anyway, so we went to Broadway, and they had a placing membership night because colleges were all coming in. So all the college students, so they had a refreshments, and you met with the elders, and there probably was 50 students there, right, on this Sunday night. And they introduced me to this elder. He knew every member at Broadway and their children's names and could recognize them at sight.
That's great.
I want to be him when I grow up. I'm like, I was so stunned. And he quickly met us. And the next week when I saw him, he called us by name. He asked me if I got registered for school. I was like blown away. This guy was the epitome of a people person. I mean, this guy, and the kids, I watched the kids interact with him. And I forget what they called him, but they had a pet name for him. He was like their grandpa. It was pretty, as a young Christian, it was very attractive to me. It was that whole thing that I said about the church had become my family. And now we moved to Texas, and here was another part of my family. And we moved over to Sunset, and they became our family. We went up to Hale Center, and they became our family. And we never were without a family. And that was really important to me.
Yeah.
It's really hard to maintain that. It's a struggle. So,
Absolutely.
Have you ever been in contact with churches that say we will support an evangelist? You don't have to be the main man. I mean, I've struggled with that for 40 years. Even when I worked with co-workers, one came back to me and said, I'm going to be fired if I'm not the head preacher, if I'm not the pulpit preacher.
yeah,
Anyway, it's a problem in the body of Christ, as far as congregations that are willing to support someone who just says, I want to evangelize. It's like that's a foreign word, a foreign concept. Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
it's difficult, and I'm going to say that without getting into sidetrack too much, one of the things that I've noted in preaching is that there's so much paperwork and administration that's come into ministry.
Yeah.
And every minister is not an administrator. So it's difficult. If I skip a day, I have a stack of emails. A lot of them are actually people asking questions about scripture. Some of them are asking about something here in the body. Some are asking about the church. They're not even part of the body. I try to answer them because I look at those things as opportunities that God has given me. But there's no church paying you to do that. Okay. That's not what you're being supported for. So it's that's stuff that comes out of your own time mostly. And then just like the land we bought, stuff like that. You get somebody says, well, you should have a deacon do it. But the deacons are working, and they contact you during the day. That's when you get calls and stuff. So you end up answering questions and looking up paperwork and looking up something that they need from some paper, some obscure piece of paper that was sent to you. So anyway, a lot of that stuff, when I was a missionary in South Africa, there was zero of that stuff. We were talking about what area we were going to reach out to next and planning a trip to preach. And that was really refreshing.
Yep.
Somebody said to me one day, well, isn't this just like, this is a funny statement. They said, isn't being the preacher here just like working in Africa, only the people there are foreigners? I said, actually, the people there aren't foreigners. We were foreigners. But no, it's not the same at all. There's just a lot of administrative stuff here.
Yeah.
That we deal with, and honestly, and Don does too. We both have enough that it is a large portion of our work. My brother-in-law preached in a place, and they had a facilitator that the church paid.
Yeah.
He did the bulletin. He did most of the administrative stuff. He handled everything as a representative of the church. If they had a project, like they were putting on an extension on, or they were putting something onto their fellowship area, he made sure he planned the work days. He made sure the workers were there, and he made sure all the materials were there.
Right.
The preacher didn't do any of it. The preacher did Bible studies and personal work, and the elders did counseling. And it was, I went there to do a meeting, and it was like, nice day. It was encouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we were over in Pittsfield today, and they're still looking for a preacher, the New Berkshire Church of Christ. And several preachers who came and interviewed, you're asking me to do too much, and they turned the job down for that same reason. they want to do a certain thing about reaching the lost and building a congregation, and yet there's 15 other tasks they have to do that take up all their time. And they just said, we can't do all that. We, you know. Anyway, they're having a problem with that, of getting someone, a family there, or even a teamwork
I'm gonna
together.
go.
Okay, Ben, you have a good week.
You too.
So was that the one that David Tarbuck's working with?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the family, I guess the family from Albany that moved over there, that lived there, they went down to Tennessee to help, I think, his dad to build a house. And they never came back, I guess. And so that was a shock.
Well, they're back now.
Oh, they're back now.
I
That's
talked to
good.
them yesterday. They were one of the calls I made, and
Uh-huh.
they're looking forward to coming next Sunday. So,
Good. Oh, that's good.
yeah, David called me and said, what are they doing? Because they're members here. I said, they don't know they're members there because they're still writing us and sending their prayer requests to us and talking to us on the phone. And he
Uh-huh.
goes, well, they need to be members here because we need them. I said, I understand, but we're not in the practice of telling people they have to leave our congregation. So,
Right. Yeah.
so David and I have an incredible respect for him,
Mhm.
and I love him as a brother. But it's he's got a certain way of doing things. If you're working with him, you're going to do it his way.
Yeah.
So they asked me a year ago to be the minister there.
Yeah, it's a shame that sometimes we destroy the concept of the one church and that we're brethren working together for the common good. Yeah.
You know, I'm friends with Chuck Young.
Yeah,
There's some things they're doing I don't agree with,
yeah,
but it's difficult when David was talking to me about it. I said, did you approach the church there about what you were going to do? And he was like, well, I thought we would just let them find out on their own.
yeah, it's a shame.
I said, honestly, I had known Chuck a long time. Chuck won't be
Yeah.
angry or anything. And he wasn't. They did reach out to him and he wished them well. So
I didn't know he was still there.
I believe he was. This was a year ago. He was. He's not the minister, I don't think.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
remember Russell Moody?
Oh, yeah.
Well, Russell Moody's son was the minister,
Oh,
but I think he may have left too. I don't know.
yeah.
But we,
Yeah, I somewhere I saw something where it said that they did not have a full-time worker at this point.
oh, okay. I don't
And
know.
a half a dozen other churches in Vermont were looking for full-time workers.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, it's something we have to work on.
Yeah, it's I told David I'd rather go. I'm not condoning anything Pittsfield is doing, but I would rather go somewhere where there wasn't a congregation.
Yep.
And rather than go in and get into conflict with brethren.
That's right.
I
Yeah,
don't know about you, but I've had enough of that.
yeah. We don't need to be wasting our time with that. I
No.
agree. There's some really nice towns there that they could start a satellite work from, I guess, working from the church in Connecticut that's the sponsor, his son. There's plenty of towns to start works. It's we don't have to start battles.
I have always wanted to see to start a church in Amsterdam.
Yep.
It when we were driving in with our U-Haul, actually it was a Ryder truck. We passed Amsterdam, and I said I'd already done some work looking at churches in the area and everything.
Yeah.
And I told my wife, I said, someday there'll be a church there. They've shrunk up a lot from what they were when I came here, but this is the town, but
Yeah.
recent, when I looked over there, there's only like 22,000 people
Mm,
in Amsterdam. It used to be much bigger,
yeah.
but there used to be industry there too.
Yep.
So
Glove making and all kinds of leather.
if they would were able to bring in some industry, their population would go up
Yeah.
dramatically. So
Yeah. Oh, my.
Good night. I'm gonna go.
All right. Good idea.
alrighty. It was good talking to you guys.
Good talking to you, Kerry.
Looking forward to next Sunday, Carrie.
Thank you. Yeah, we are too. It's time.
Yeah,
Now,
true.
did you preach this morning?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay, we were on the road and tried to tune into Don, who was doing the Zoom class at 9 o'clock, but we were on the road and it was hard to do that, but
Yeah, I went down to the building and did the last virtual. Hopefully, I don't want to be ideal. I don't want to be unrealistic, but hopefully the last virtual we'll have to do. I'm hoping we can stay open.
yeah, yeah.
It's
Our daughter in California called this afternoon and she said that their church is meeting, they have to bring their own lawn chairs. They sit in the parking lot.
Hmm.
And that's how they're worshiping.
you know what? We should try that here.
Yeah, right.
I don't think we'd have a problem with crowding.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, well, on that note,
There you go.
Let's see it.
have a good night, Carrie.
Yeah.
All right. Good night.
Good night.